has the sole authority to recognize the future reincarnation. No one else has any such authority to interfere in this matter, the Dalai Lama said. The Dalai Lama has taken a decisive step to anchor his succession in the Tibetan spiritual authority, ensuring continuity of leadership posthumously. Top intelligence sources say his statement preempts any Chinese propaganda or parallel installation efforts with Panchen Lama's appointment. This also reflects a diplomatic win for Bharat and Dharamshala. The Dalai Lama has clearly stated that the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue through his successor, reversing the ambiguity he maintained since 1969 about whether the lineage should persist. Now he confirms on his 90th birthday that the lineage will continue beyond his lifetime. Top intelligence sources emphasize that the Dalai Lama's statement neutralizes Beijing's narrative that the Dalai Lama's role is outdated or that his successor can be controlled through state machinery. It creates a shield around his reincarnation, rooted in tradition and institutional legitimacy, making any future Chinese appointed Dalai Lama appear inauthentic. Intelligence sources also note that the inclusion of consultations with Mongolian, Russian, Himalayan and Chinese Buddhist communities internationalizes the selection process and signals broad legitimacy. Operationally, it empowers the exile apparatus, including the Garden Fort Rang and the Central Tibetan Administration, CTA, to begin preparing succession mechanisms discreetly before his passing. A significant step. Let's go straight across to our guests. There are many other dimensions to it, but first, let's get their thoughts first up. Ambassador Phunchok Stobdan, former diplomat, is with us. Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey, former GOC 15 Corps of the Indian Army, with us. Ainar Tangen, senior fellow, the Tahe Institute, with us, and Dr. Anand Ranganathan should also be joining us any moment now. But Ambassador Stobdan, namaste, and namaste to all our other panelists too. Your thoughts, Ambassador Stobdan, on the Dalai Lama's statement today?
Well, I was not carefully listening to what His Holiness has said today, but I assume that this is a big political statement he has made, and it's a massive departure from the previous conventions. It's a political statement vis-a-vis China. So it will have implication. It is a geopolitical statement. It's not a spiritual statement. So this is one, because spiritually there has never been a tradition to have a press conference or a public meeting through which reincarnation is decided in advance. Reincarnation is decided by some indication that the person who is dying leaves certain things behind. That was the tradition in the last 1,000 years since the Tibetans have the system of reincarnation. But this is a departure, and I think it is very significant for Tibet, because they have to do it. They are not comfortable under the Chinese system, so they will have no option but to get legitimacy from outside China. So far, the legitimacy for the last 400 years, the Dalai Lama, from the 5th to 13th Dalai Lama or the 14th Dalai Lama, came from China. It is the Chinese who made him great through the Peking Court. So that system has now collapsed. The Communist Party does not hold the value and the credential to qualify or legitimize the authority of Dalai Lama. So therefore, they will look towards New Delhi, they will look toward Washington, they will look towards Mongolia, elsewhere. So it's a right move by His Holiness to seek legitimacy from outside China. Whether he is born outside India or outside China or not in China, it's a different thing. It will be decided by international law.
But Ambassador, if you look at it,
if
you look at it from the perspective of Tibet, occupied Chinese territory, and Tibetan Buddhism, what is the message that His Holiness's statement today will send to the Tibetan Buddhists and the Tibetans across the world? Will this then perhaps...
That's all right, but it has to be translated into this has to be translated into political reality. Tibet does not live in vacuum. Tibet is a territory, but it doesn't have international recognition. So where do you want to place this announcement? Under Chinese, under the international system, under Indian system, how do you announce? It cannot be in the air. So while it's all right through divination and religious means, you can have rebirth. But the problem is during the Ram Janambhumi, the consecration is done by the Pandits, the knowledgeable people. That's all right. But then you had also Prime Minister sitting there, which gives you political legitimacy to whatever you have done at Ayodhya. So in any event, you have both the spiritual and the political legitimacy. What I am saying is that the Tibetans are now looking for political legitimacy outside China. So they are not comfortable with Peking, because Communist Party cannot legitimize according to His Holiness. So that's the only change. Otherwise, there is no change at all.
Ji, just quickly taking our viewers through what the succession process is as per the tradition. This is what we have been able to glean and we're sharing with our viewers, and then we'll go to our other panelists. The selection is that it is led by the High Lamas, and they lead a spiritual search for the reincarnated child. The Dalai Lama wants the Garden Fort Drunk Trust as a sole authority to recognize the successor. Now, as per traditional selection, reincarnation is sought in Tibet based on spiritual science. The Dalai Lama wants the successor to be born in a free country, indicating Bharat, we don't know, or maybe some other nation, we don't know. The process is established in the 2011 statement. Now, as per the traditional selection, search for the successor is post the Dalai Lama's death, often causing a leadership vacuum or a gap. The Dalai Lama wants his trust to prepare succession even ahead of his passing. The entire plan. Now, we don't know how it is going to be undertaken, but that's the indication. Now, as per traditional selection, the Qing dynasty used the golden urn process that was independent. The Dalai Lama explicitly bars China's involvement, as Ambassador Phuntsuk Stopdan was just mentioning, rejecting their golden urn claims. Now, as per traditional selection, Panchen Lama and Tibetan monks played key roles. The Dalai Lama wants global Buddhist leaders to counter China's appointed Panchen Lama. Traditional selection is derived from Tibetan Buddhist consensus. The Dalai Lama wants only trust-recognized Dalai Lama as to be legitimate. The Chinese choice is deemed as invalid. That's the political message that the ambassador was also talking about. Aina Tangen, your thoughts? Namaste.
Well, as you said, this is a political message that's being sent out by the Dalai Lama. I don't think it's spiritual in the sense that unless he's God, he doesn't determine who the next Lama will be. I mean, he is one among many. He's revered as the higher one. He fled China. And don't forget, the time that he left Tibet, the average life expectancy was 42 years old. Most women died in childbirth because they didn't have medical care. People were not free. They were serfs. Only the nobility and the clergy, in this case the Buddhists, could own land. The rest of them were just hoping for a better life in the next future. So yes, this is a political fight. He believes that his system is right. China believes their system is right. The question is, which one has served the Tibetan people better?
General Pandey, your thoughts on that?
It's something, please understand, Anand, that we have to go back. When was the current Dalai Lama reincarnation as selected as or reincarnated as a Dalai Lama? It happened in 1935, right? When he was about 2 years old. That point of time, the traditional system which was there followed was perfectly fine because China in the present entity was not there. Tibet was a free country or free domain. So when you carry out such kind of a practice where religion was free and it was following a norm, it was okay. The contextual time has not since changed, right? The second part you have to very quickly see is that do the Chinese technically believe in religious orientations? So when there is a country which has no faith in religion or religious practices, for them to nominate a spiritual head in a process which is controlled by them and supposed to be approved by the central authority or central government is basically flawed. Religion and political, while a lot of people may say they are quite interlinked, and Ambassador, His Excellency has just given an example of Ram Mandir temple, which I think may not be very, very correct, because eventually the leadership of a religion is not decided by, in India at least, by a political dispensation, and I don't know in anywhere in the free world it is being done, because state, politics and religion are quite two separate entities. So to say that Mutt's head or somebody else is being decided by political establishment is not correct. So somewhere in the free world, and that is what possibly Dalai Lama, His Highness, is trying to indicate, that when you are under, when you are being dominated, controlled by a country which practically doesn't believe in Christianity, Buddhism, even their own systems, which are very, very old systems, how are they going to legislate to have a spiritual head? And just look at 14 years back, he had a different view. He said that we may decide on reincarnation in case there's an upsurge or a demand of the same. So possibly he's got demand. Let's trust His Excellency, His Highness has really led the Buddhist people in such a trying time, and he's done extremely well. So when he takes such a step and makes such a statement, he must have done his work quite distinctively correctly. And we need to believe in his word rather than trying to believe in the word of Chinese, where actually nobody can speak anything.
Yeah, whether one should believe the methods of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or that emerges from CCP and PLA is a question that the Tibetan Buddhists and his followers and the followers of Tibetan Buddhism have to now take that call. Meanwhile, just before we bring in Dr. Ranganathan and go back to Ambassador and the other panelists, some more information. Manoj Kumar Gupta, our Security and Investigations Group Editor here at Network 18, getting us these details via intelligence sources who reveal a significant setback for China and a gain for Bharat as the Dalai Lama's recent speech directly challenges Beijing's long-term Tibet strategy. Now, according to sources, the Dalai Lama's clarification of his spiritual succession mechanism represents a substantial strategic blow to China by declaring that only the Garden Phodrang Trust will oversee his reincarnation. The Dalai Lama has completely invalidated any future Chinese governmental attempts to appoint a Dalai Lama. Intel sources highlight that such an appointment by China would lack both political and spiritual legitimacy and be perceived globally as fraudulent. Sources also note that Beijing's efforts to use soft power in Tibet have been undermined. Chinese investment in the Panchen Lama has been rendered futile by the Dalai Lama statement, which has presented him as progressive, consultative, as a leader, deeply rooted in traditional Buddhist authority. Top intel sources underscore that with the Garden Phodrang Trust operating under Indian protection in Dharamshala, the recognition locus of the next Dalai Lama and the seat of Tibetan spiritual legitimacy are firmly established on Bharatiya soil. This development showcases Bharat's soft power throughout the Buddhist world. Nations with substantial Buddhist populations, including Mongolia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Japan, Bhutan and Vietnam, are now more inclined to seek moral and spiritual leadership in Buddhism from Bharat rather than China. This is the assessment. Now, whether the Chinese agree with it, disagree with it, that's another matter. Sources further affirm that the Dalai Lama's statement aligns with internal Tibetan sentiment, indicating that decades of Chinese repression have failed to extinguish Tibetan faith or loyalty. This represents a defeat for the Communist Party and the PLA and subtly reinforces Bharat's Tibet policy. The Dalai Lama's announcement has profound spiritual significance, offering an opportunity to shape the future of Buddhist diplomacy and Tibetan identity from Dharamshala rather than from Lhasa. There's more information, we'll get to that in a bit. But Dr. Ranganathan, more political, less spiritual, many opine, more towards Bharat, away from the CCP and the PLA. But this also presents a new set of challenges, both for Tibetan Buddhist monastery, Dharamshala, His Holiness, and also Bharat. Thank you for your patience.
Absolutely. Good evening, Anand, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Look, when are we going to realize that we are a soft power and China is a hard power? And we believe in the two B's, benevolence and brotherhood. And China believes in the two B's, that is brainwashing and basically the other B I would not like to talk about right now, maybe at the end of the, whatever I'm going to say. The fact of the matter is twofold. We are going to get the brickbats come what may. because let's face it, China is too big to fail. There are more non-converted Zoroastrians in India than there are in Iran, their birthplace. And very soon, there'll be more non-converted Tibetans in India than there would be in China. And that's a fact. And we will get all the abuses, and people will forget what China has done. The fact of the matter is that China is airbrushing not only history but also cultures right before our eyes, because it is, as I said, the first one was brainwashing, the second one is buying out. It is simply buying out the media. I mean, you've seen what's happened to Uyghur Muslims right now out there. 1.5 million of them are in concentration camp. They are being fed pork. They are being forcibly sterilized. And where is the outrage of the global Muslim Ummah? They're completely silent. In the last 5 years, China has destroyed 1,700 mosques. The most famous mosques in China no longer have their, domes. They have been removed. Where is the outrage? There is no outrage. Likewise, you recently saw the editors of an Indian prominent newspaper go to Tibet, which they no longer call Tibet, and singing paeans of China. But the fact of the matter is, we also have to understand what our official policy is. We have always, since 1954, since the blunders, Nehruvian blunders, have recognized China to be, or Tibet rather, to be a official part of China.
Yeah, the one China policy.
That's the China policy. That hasn't changed. The fact of the matter is, we may talk about, however much laudably, about the spiritual protection that we give to Tibetans. But until or unless something is done about political protection, I'm afraid, I am vexed to use this phrase, but China is too big to fail. It has proven this, Anand, in the wake of the COVID pandemic, where it destroyed the world economy and killed millions of people, directly responsible for COVID, the spread of COVID. How did it suffer? It's not suffered at all. All the supply chains, all the economic might of China is back with a bang. The fact is, China is going to soon eradicate whatever spiritual, forget about the economic strength of what Tibet was. That is going to be wiped out within half a decade. But the spiritual content of what Tibet was is going to be wiped out within a decade or maybe a couple of decades. And I'm telling you, like the fact is, you had the Chinese equivalent of Chat GDP no longer trying to say that Tiananmen Square was a massacre. You will have in a couple of decades people saying that Tibet was always part of China. There was no annexation at all. That is the reality. We have to face up with it.
Correct. Now this revisionism of history, revisionism of the next generation being delinked from their own culture and their roots, that's a challenge. What is Bharat going to do about it? What are Tibetan Buddhists going to do about it? That's a question. We got a statement by the CCP that's come through. The Chinese Communist Party aims to confuse the global public and delegitimize Dharamshala. Dharamshala's religious authority. Top intel sources have told CNN News 18 that the ultimate goal is to demonstrate China's soft power, expansion in Buddhist majority regions and across the world where Buddhist seats are present. Now, this is a further addition that the People's Republic of China is implementing a dual front strategy in Tibet involving systematic repression and also cultural erasure in Lhasa. On the one front, the CCP is transforming Lhasa into a surveillance-heavy, Han-dominated city. On the other front, it seeks total control over Tibetan spiritual succession, aiming to impose a Communist Party-approved successor, the 14th Dalai Lama. This includes China's appointment of its own Panchen Lama, bypassing the legitimate selection made by the Dalai Lama. This is what sources are saying. Top intel sources further reveal that the main tool for this strategy is ethnic engineering, with Han Chinese now forming a majority in Lhasa, sidelining indigenous Tibetans economically, culturally, demographically, and politically. Since 1959, over 6,000 monasteries have been destroyed, with remaining institutions monitored, rebuilt for tourism, or transformed into political tools. Possession of the Dalai Lama's photos is a criminal offense, and monks are subjected to patriotic re-education, forced to praise the Communist Party in sermons. Lhasa operates under constant digital surveillance, featuring AI-enabled cameras, police informants, and PLA patrols, creating a climate of perpetual fear. The Tibetan language is nearly erased from the urban education, while Mandarin dominates public life. Arbitrary detentions, secret prison camps, and psychological torture tactics are widely reported by those in exile and NGOs. And according to sources, China's plan to select the new Dalai Lama, as seen in the earlier Panchen Lama power grab, is designed to erase Tibetan resistance and spiritually and politically. That's the ultimate aim. Ambassador Phunchok Stopdan, everybody is outlining that China is too big to fail, and this is what they're doing. So they're doing it systematically. Demographically, socially, politically, economically, they're removing Tibetans out of Tibet. What is it that Bharat can do to try and work on this political legitimacy of Tibet? Or is it too much of a tightrope to walk?
I think Mr. Ranganathan is correct. China is too big to deal with. We ourselves have a lot of problem with China at the bilateral level and at the border issues. The issue is not about China. The issue about how to confer legitimacy to His Holiness by Bharat. Do we have a law? Do we have legislation? Do we have the tradition? Do we have the history? The 14th Dalai Lama was enthroned in 1940 in Lhasa. We didn't send a representative to Lhasa that time. Mr. Basil Gold, who was a British trade representative in Gyeongsang, was asked to join the ceremony in Lhasa along with the prince of Sikkim. So two of them went with gift to His Holiness in 1940 to Lhasa. The Tibetans didn't even give them sitting arrangement. There were no protocols for India. There were no India, of course, the British India. So issue is there is no reference point for India's role in the selection of the Dalai Lama. Now we could have a new one, but even for the new one, we need a homework to be done. You just can't say the His Holiness. It has to be properly, conditioned at a certain level at the legislation, at the social level, at the value level. Even Bharat does not live in vacuum. I mean, tomorrow the Chinese will have some reincarnation of Lord Vishnu in Peking. We have to think about it. There is a Kamrup Raja, Raja of Sikkim, Assam. He could be born in Yunnan. He says he's been reincarnated. Raja of Nepal could be reincarnated. So there are historical conditions, there are historical reasonings and the facts. Those things need to be understood first. Just to say that we could, tomorrow onwards, His Holiness becomes an Indian, that's all right. But it is doing harm to the Tibetans. Tibetans will not like it. Tibetans will remain a Tibetan. You don't throw the baby with the bath water. Yes, so the sanctity of His Holiness institution must be maintained through the Tibetan means. To say that I will Indianize or Americanize or British, that's a different issue altogether. We can do that. What I'm saying is that I'm not endorsing what the Chinese are doing. I'm saying whether the sanctity of the Tibetan tradition is being maintained just for a political, scoring a political goal. So that's my question. Otherwise, anybody can do anything. He can be born in Kenya also. How does it matter?
Correct.
So therefore, everything has to be seen through.
True, and this will also clearly, viewers, mean that Bharat will have to not just officially recognize Tibet as a separate entity, but also break away, which will also imply that it breaks away from the One China policy. The CCP and the Chinese
supported by institutions and policies.
Yeah, institutions and policy, because legislatively it will have to be backed, Parliament will have to ratify it, then it will have to become a clear doctrinal position that Bharat
Otherwise,
takes.
Home Ministry cannot confer, or some agencies cannot confer title to His Holiness. His Holiness is a Buddhist status. You don't have institutions to do that. That's what I'm saying.
True.
Some monasteries can do it, but how strong those monasteries are. We have about 300 monasteries in the Himalayas. All of them together can give some kind of a title and legitimacy. Even that requires a Sangha. Buddha requires a Sangha. Buddha per se is not important. Sangha and a Dharma, all these things are important. Now we don't have a Buddha, we don't have a Sangha, we don't have a Dharma, just to say His Holiness is important. So homework has to be done.
Fair point made. Aina Tangen, I'm just going to take another 3 minutes on the show, on this part of the show, on this leg, on this conversation. Yes, Aina Tangen.
Well, it's always interesting to have the presenter in league with his other two guests. I mean, the number of unsupported accusations that are made are astounding. How many of you have actually been to Tibet or China in the last 10 years? I would venture to say none of you. So this idea that you can utter these falsehoods is kind of odd. I mean, it's as if somebody from China was talking about India and saying a lot of nonsense. The fact is that, unfortunately, when I asked the question, is Tibet better off today than it was under the Dalai Lama? No one chose to address that. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about literacy rates, talking about the number of years that people live, which is now 78, from where it used to be at 42, talking about people owning land themselves. If you had actually gone there and talked to the Tibetans, instead of the ones that fled Tibet and have an axe to pick, they will tell you that they're better off, that they are still spiritual, that they're not prevented from practicing their religion. If you go there, you'll see people routinely, rubbing their hands on the bells and things like this. I just wish that people would go there and see, just like in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan. The reality is quite different than the narrative that is spun by the press. India has problems with China, but I don't think that trying to vilify China is useful. You don't see China trying to vilify India. India has problems with caste, has problems with poverty, but you never hear anyone in China talking about that because they believe that each country is sovereign and that they have the right and the duty to listen to their people, and it's their people who will determine the government. So I find it quite odd that India, they feel, you in particular, this panel feels quite up to the task of deciding what's happening in China, although you haven't been here.
We're not deciding what's happening in China. We're just discussing.
Yes, you are.
No, what's happening in Tibet.
Don't even pretend. You made a series of accusations.
One minute, we are just discussing what's happening in Tibet. We're not discussing what's happening in China.
And you made a number of accusations.
So
right?
Tibet and China are not the same.
No,
that's
you
the
also
distinction.
said in
That's the
Xinjiang
distinction.
and other places.
That's the distinction.
Right? Did you make those statements or not?
Xinjiang.
I was a prosecutor. I like to remember
one
what
minute, Aina Tangen. Xinjiang means new territory. That was also not China. It was forcibly occupied. It is called East Turkestan, and the local population is Uyghurs.
Are you taking them back?
So no, we are quoting reports, and we are saying that these remain, and the Chinese have not been able to prove that. The Chinese have not been able to prove it.
Controlled by the US,
Mr. Tangen, you yourself hold a US passport, and then you're saying that the United States is lying and the People's Republic of China is speaking the truth. We are talking about Tibet. It's occupied territory. It is not Chinese territory. China is different. New territory is different. That is Xinjiang. Tibet is different. We're talking Tibet and Tibetan Buddhism. Yes, General Pandey, and then Dr. Ranganathan. Final comment.
Without proof.
I will just I'll just quickly say, when you talk of 1940s, as Mr. Tangen has brought out, everywhere there was a poverty, people were not so empowered, there were challenges not only in Tibet, it was all across the world, and things have evolved since then. So possibly that justification doesn't prove right. What I just want to say is that let's flesh it out between political and spiritual part of it, or the religious part of it. Today, Buddhism is not equal to Tibetan this thing. It is, as you said, as Dr. Anand had said, and also His Excellency Stoden has said, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Japan, Vietnam, India, we should not try and equate Dharamshala as a location of spiritual headquarters. So while spiritual headquarters of Tibetan Buddhism may rest in Lhasa, but the spiritual head today continues to reside in Dharamshala. That's a major distinction. So when Dalai Lama represents, he is representing all Buddhists of the world, right? He is the incarnation who's been selected by a process which was done somewhere in 30s, right? The context has changed. When you got larger number of people who are going to be influenced by Buddhism, who are staying in America, who are staying in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Vietnam, India, everybody, can the Chinese decide that a person who's born in Tibet is going to become one, right? So while this decision is going to have an impact on politics, right? But you allow the Buddhists to take a call for themselves who should become and what should be the process. it cannot be enforced by a political dispensation or a governmental dispensation, particularly from where religion is not supposed to be practiced as a norm.
A fair point made. Dr. Ranganathan, final comment, please.
Yeah, no, I didn't, of course, and I wish I'm not. I didn't want to be rude to one of the panelists out here. He has his points of views, but India is a free country. We are a panel where we will discuss whatever the facts are laid out on the table. Now, for him to say that none of you visited Tibet, so you don't know the reality, it's defies logic. No apple has fallen on my head. Does that mean I don't believe in gravity anymore? And by the same logic of him saying that Tibetans are much better off right now than they were before China annexed it, by the same logic, wouldn't he agree that Taiwanese are much better off right now away from China? So does that mean that they are better off not being part of China? Look, this logic doesn't work. This logic, and as you rightly put it, this gentleman is an American passport holder. Would he deny the fact that according to corroborated world, UN and American reports, China has interned 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps? Is he going to deny that? So am I in a concentration camp? I am not. But does that mean that since I am not in a concentration camp, the fact doesn't exist? I mean, did I have to be in a concentration camp in, for example, in Nazi Germany to believe that there were 6 billion Jews that were interned there and they were gassed? So this kind of logic that you have to suffer the consequences or you have to be present there to understand what the reality is, I'm afraid it is illogical and irrational.
Well, anyway, we can park that argument for another day. But there is a statement of intent that's come from His Holiness. Now, does Bharat follow through, because he's made that on Bharatiya soil, with looking towards Bharat to back him and give Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhists and Tibet political legitimacy, and also further the spiritual cause of Tibetan Buddhists? We'll have to wait and watch how it unfolds. That it's a long road, it's not an easy one, and we have to walk back these words and back this trust with intent and action in the coming days. Thank you very much to our panelists, Dr. Ranganathan and General Pandey. Do stay on with us. We'll come back to you in a bit. Quickly taking our viewers through with something that's developed. It's been a while since we've spoken about this, but it's more than 2 weeks since this entire incident happened. It is after the deadly A171 crash that killed all but one of the 242 people on board. Investigators and the airline are now looking into whether both the engines of the plane failed, which may have caused the Boeing 787 to lose control and crash. This has been reported by Bloomberg. While malpractice has not been ruled out, a technical snag seems to be the most likely cause identified thus far. Pilots from the airline reenacted the doomed aircraft's parameters in a flight simulator, including with the landing gear deployed and the wing flaps retracted. They found that those settings alone didn't cause the crash, the report claimed. Emergency power turbine deployed soon after takeoff. Technical failure, possible cause is what the net takeaway is. The probability has shifted the focus to technical failure, which may be a possible cause. That's the report has quoted, and it's also quoting the same people who conducted the simulator test. And according to the report, an analysis of the wreckage also suggests the wing flaps and the slats, which help an aircraft increase lift during takeoff, were extended correctly. The pilots who died in the crash sent out a mayday signal shortly after takeoff. There were only about 15 seconds between the distress call and impact. 2 people familiar with the investigation confirmed to Bloomberg. So, pilots from the plane used the flight simulator to recreate the flight using pilots from the airline, pilots from the airline used a flight simulator to recreate the flight using the same conditions, such as landing gear being down, wing flaps being pulled in. They found that these settings alone did not lead to the crash. Bloomberg reported further that people involved in the investigation also corroborated this. This finding, along with earlier evidence that an emergency power unit switched on just seconds before the crash, has made investigators focus more on a possible technical fault as one of the reasons for the accident. Did something happen on ground during the fueling process? Could it be contaminated fuel? Could it be some other corroboration which led to the dual engine failure? We've told you in the past that Boeing 787 has a unique feature, that is the central fuel tank that is used for takeoff, for fueling the engines during takeoff, after which the individual fuel tanks of both the right and left side then they are the ones that pump the fuel towards the engines. Now, flight simulation is done using computer models, and the aim is to recreate a virtual environment of flying an aircraft. This includes how the aircraft moves, how it reacts to the pilot's controls, and how it responds to things like wind, air pressure, and also turbulence. In Air India's case, it was done to determine what could have led to the fatal crash in June. After A171, out of 33 Boeing Dreamliners that the Air India operates at present, Air India has now completed the regulatory maintenance checks post June 12th accident on 29 of these aircraft. 4 of these B787 aircraft of the Dreamliners are currently undergoing pre-scheduled maintenance process, and simultaneously the airline has also begun maintenance checks on other aircraft in its fleet, including the Boeing 777 fleet. Currently, Air India operates 24 such 777 aircraft. Voluntary enhanced checks on all other aircraft are also being done. This is being done in a phased manner to minimize the unavailability of aircraft because that can disrupt operational schedules, flight operation. And this is to also maintain smooth, regular operations. Meanwhile, there is another exclusive on the A171 investigation aspect. Investigators are in the second phase of examining the data recorded from Ahmedabad ATC radar and also other equipment. Now the ground-based navigation interrogators are being looked at, including ground-based augmentation system and the VOR VHF omnidirectional range, while the GBAS utilizes ground-based reference stations to correct GPS signals, providing enhanced accuracy. The VOR stations transmit signals that provide accurate directional information. Another significant factor being looked at is the airborne satellite-based telemetry, which constantly communicates with the aircraft. Now, this is being analyzed in depth. The focus of investigation is on identifying mechanical issues, but investigators are also looking at human factors that may have interrupted the flight. Maintenance logs are being studied along with contributing weather-related factors to determine the root cause of the accident. A preliminary report is likely in the second week of July on the above findings. Let us hope we are able to get to the entire bottom of what actually happened and identify the reason why AI-171 crashed within 15 seconds of the takeoff maneuver being underplayed. 33 seconds from the time it just started onto the tarmac, onto the runway. Let's get a move on, viewers, to another aspect. And we'll talk cricket. We're not talking about the second test at Birmingham. We're talking about Bharat's precision strikes against Pakistan in Operation Sindoor that showed the world that the country had redefined its policy against terror, and its intent was clear that any act of terror will be treated as an act of war. The other part, that Operation Sindoor has only been paused, it is still on. The diplomatic strikes that began before Bharat decimated Pakistan's terror hotbeds and pummeled its air bases played a crucial role in shaping strategic environment and ensuring public and international support against Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. Now, through strategic policy making, information dominance and psychological operations, Bharat diplomatically and economically isolated Pakistan while strengthening domestic preparedness and global backing. The Asia Cup, delayed, now set to start on the 5th of September in the UAE, with Bharat, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Afghanistan and the UAE participating. Matches will follow a group stage and a super force format, including 2 clashes between India and Pakistan on the 7th and the 14th of September. Now, India has put the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, saying pani और खून एक साथ नहीं बहेगा. Blood and water cannot flow together. Closed the Atari-Wagah border, suspended all bilateral trade, saying blood and trade cannot go hand in hand with Pakistan. Revoked visas, saying travel and blood cannot go hand in hand. Pak nationals in Bharat are blocked Pakistani YouTubers, although that ban has now been lifted and social media handles post the Pahalgam terror strike. But why this exception with cricket? Can blood and bat flow together, go together? There's uproar and controversy over Diljit Dosanjh starrer Sardarji 3 featuring Pakistani actor Hania Amir. Calls for Diljit's movie being blocked out. That movie is not even released in Bharat. Now they are saying take Diljit out of all other movies also. Forthcoming, Border. They have asked for it and he's out of it. But Bharat has decided they will play Asia Cup with Pakistan in it. Let's try and understand this. And viewers, as I take my seat, we put out a poll. We've put out a poll here on CNN News 18. It's on the CNN News, on X handle. If you go to the CNN News 18 X handle, this is the poll. The question we are asking there is, after Operation Sindoor, the biggest rivalry in cricket is back. But here's the question. If blood and water can't mix, can cricket? And should India play Pakistan in the Asia Cup 2025 is the question. So far, 76.3% of our respondents are saying no, not after Operation Sindoor. There is another poll that I put out on the X personally, and the question was a little more acute there, saying, should Bharat play the Asia Cup at all if Pakistan were to play? And there, most respondents have said no. Out of 633 votes, 93.7% are saying we should not play Asia Cup if Pakistan is taking part. So the idea is, don't forfeit the match against Pakistan. Don't play the tournament itself. If Bharat doesn't play Asia Cup, will there be an Asia Cup? That's the question. General Pandey is with us. Ashok Pandit is with us. Anand Ranganathan with us. My namaste and Jai Hind, gentlemen. This is the poll that we put out on CNN News 18, and we've got the poll that I have asked, and we see what the respondents are saying. Ashok Panditji, Diljit Dosanjh should not be in Border 3. His movie should not be released in Bharat. Any Pakistani artist should not come to Bharat. But we are ready to play cricket with them.
Anand, sometimes we feel that people sitting on the chair, they are not in correct alignment with the emotions of the people and emotions of the country. When the war happened, entire country stood by them. We were also fighting a digital war. We also were all out, day and night, and we were concerned about our country. In fact, especially for the security forces. In fact, before cricket, let me tell you that today we had a meeting in the Federation and we are all very pained, and we are feeling cheated today because the government of India has withdrawn the ban on a lot of digital platforms which originates from Pakistan.
YouTubers
and other OTT. A lot of actors and lot of actors and actresses, Pakistani actresses there. What were banned are again being allowed to be there. So we are fighting a battle here where we stand by the country, we call our religion as nation first. And suddenly we
has the government officially withdrawn it, or has the government not even realized that the ban period of 30 days has lapsed and they have not challenged it further?
No, see, that's not our lookout. It's a lookout of the government. Now, they should be serious. What are those people doing there, sitting on the chair? What are the officials doing there? What is the IT ministry doing? What is the IMB ministry doing? What are the people sitting doing there? Me as a citizen of this country, I'm pained today seeing all these things coming on. We are fighting a battle of not allowing Diljit to perform in further films. The entire federation has come on the streets. So it's very sad. Now, Anand, what we would like to feel that whether you coming to cricket, when I wish you would have run the visuals of Pahalgam attack. How come you become so unserious and callous and insensitive towards people who are being killed by this country for years together? Last 40 years, this country has been attacked by this country. Our country has been attacked by Pakistan. I don't have to go into details because we all know what Pakistan has been doing to us. Time and again we have raised this issue. Time and again we have sat with you on debates. Time and again we have given our opinions that no, we don't want to play. Why should we play? You are insulting and you are abusing the security forces. You are playing with the emotions of the entire country. You are playing with the emotions of the families of the security forces and all the victims of terrorism. You are playing with the emotions of us who have suffered the worst possible genocide and ethnic cleansing. You are playing with the emotions of the people who have become rootless, who have become homeless constantly. Then what is the difference between you and Mamata Banerjee? What is the difference between you and you call yourself as nationalists and we are there fighting for the country and all that? So there is a lot of confusion. Then you give the reason that No, whether you play with Asia, whether Asia.
Ashok ji.
It's not. Wherever
Ashok ji.
Pakistan is there, our country should not.
No, yes, exactly. That's the point. Ashok ji, there are those who believe that don't mix sports with politics.
You are giving reasons.
Ashok ji, there are those who are saying that don't mix sports with politics. But there are those who are saying Bharat is so powerful that we should not play Asia Cup. Cricket is one place where we are the behemoth contributing 75. One minute. Ashok ji, I'm just going to the other panelists. 73% of our audience, our global cricket's revenues comes from Bharat. If Bharat doesn't play Asia Cup, will they play Asia Cup? Can they even conduct the tournament? General Pandey, now why is this lost on us as a nation?
I'm sorry, I will possibly differ on this thing. One is bilateralism and second is multilateralism, right? We simply just cannot keep on going out and say that we will not go and attend SCO meeting. We will not sit in the same United Nations hall where Pakistanis are sitting. Or today the chairmanship of Pakistan has come of UN, so we will not send our ambassadors to attend the meetings. So there is a huge grey between 0 and 1. Right, and trust me, Shokji, I am so grateful for your emotions and everything for the security forces. I have served in the harshest of conditions for about 7 tenure. I am only looking at a grey zone in international relations. Cricket comes out to be, and I'm not a very fond of cricket myself. I don't watch cricket, but I'm only looking at when you talk of Asia Cup. There's an international forum of Asia Cup in which there are 4 countries involved. Yes, we can use the card to push everybody to an edge and say, okay, we are going to dissolve it. So we are dissolving SAARC, we are dissolving ASEAN, we are dissolving now SCO, which are forums in which we can decide to start moving out over a period of time. Now, in spite of our economic muscle in the region or wherever we are, right? Tomorrow, when these same events start getting conducted even without us, in lower scale and low scale, a large scale of people whom have said, respondents who have said that we should not play in Asia Cup, right? They are the same people who will come that your country is now getting isolated. I think in an international realm, in the multilateral realm, you can't afford, you just can't say in Olympics, if you are not put a draw in a sports, in a hockey fixture, that you will not play against X or you will only play this thing. So I think we need to draw caveat to bilateralism and we need to draw a caveat for multilateralism.
Point well taken, sir. But here's the question. I'm not saying that we will not play Pakistan in the Asia Cup. What my submission is, we should say, all right, you go ahead and conduct Asia Cup. We don't want to play. The reason why we say that, we take that position is, they cannot play Asia Cup without Bharat because the revenues come from Bharatiya. And if the Asia Cup happens, then Pakistan's coffers will be filled. The Pakistan cricket will fund itself, funnel itself, and then they will be those same cricketers who will come and abuse our country and post these posters rather than condemning acts of terrorism. So that's the point. The point is not saying forfeit the match against Pakistan. The point is, tell them, you want to play, you want to make money, we'll play, come, we'll play. They will not play. If you want to play with them, please go ahead and play. We will not play. Dr. Ranganathan, fair point to take. Can we not take that position? How much is the not playing Asia Cup going to hurt BCCI?
Very quickly, 3 points here, and may I differ with all 3 of you on this aspect. Coming closest to General Pandey, but let me just say this. I am not a man of grey at all. I am a man of black and white, unfortunately. The way I see it is 3 points. Number 1, should politics be involved in sports or vice versa? Yes, it should. If we believe that to have politics is to take a moral and ethical stand, of course it should. For example, for 40 years, we had nothing to do with South Africa. At that point of time in the 1950s, one of the most prosperous economic countries in the world, but we took a moral and ethical and political stand because it is an apartheid state, and we had stood shoulder to shoulder with the enslaved and the people who were discriminated. We took that stand, and every one of us, all Indians cutting across party lines, supported us. So we boycotted South Africa, sports or otherwise, number 1. Number 2, are we going to take this stand equally with all countries that perpetrate terror? That is the problem that I have. For example, China is also a terror supporter. China has usurped our land. China killed our Jawans. But we seem to be treating China on a completely different platter than we seem to be treated Pakistan. There is our hypocrisy. Number two, and finally number three. And here I agree with General Pandey. We don't want to appear hypocritical. I completely agree that when it comes to Pakistan alone bilateral, yes, we have nothing to do with Pakistan. We must not have any relationship because it's a terror state. But when it comes to international tournaments, why didn't we boycott Olympics? Pakistan was taking part there. North Korea was taking part there. So we don't want to appear hypocritical because Pakistan is taking part in international events and we are not. Either we boycott all international events or any other event where Pakistan is taking part. But if it is taking part and we take part in it, for us to say, look, we will boycott Asia Cup because it doesn't matter, but we will take part in Olympics. So that is hypocritical.
See, point is that in Olympics we are not a behemoth. We are not a nation that wields the kind of clout that we need to in Olympics.
That's being great.
But are we? No, it's not being grey. It's being practical. Where are we the behemoth and where do we wield the power? Where do we wield the soft power? 73 to 75% of global cricket's revenues comes from playing cricket with Bharat. So if Bharat cannot call the shots there, where else will it call the shots? Wherever there is a certain amount of muscle, strength, and to pummel the enemy and show them their place. Why should it? No. It's a simple point. Are we going to wage a 90-hour war with China? The dynamics are different. How can you equate even Pakistan and China and put them on the same? Pakistan is a vassal state. That's where Ashok Pandey, one sec. That's where the point that where Bharat has the ability to call the shots and punish Pakistan. Nobody is punishing Bangladesh. Nobody is punishing UAE or Sri Lanka. We're not punishing them. We are telling them, you play with us, don't play with them. You want to play with them, go ahead and play with them. I don't want to play, so I'm not playing. That's all. You go ahead and do it. That's the ICC can take that position. BCCI is where within its right to say we don't want to participate. There's no compulsion. Nobody's holding a gun to your head. Ashok Pandit, fair, unfair?
Anand, I really wanted to respond to General Saab. There are a lot of reasonings and questionings and arguments being created whether we should play or whether. The day our security forces jawans who are fighting decides कि भैया हम तो लड़ रहे हैं देश के लिए, ये तो उन्हीं दुश्मनों के साथ खेल रहे हैं, तो भैया जो क्रिकेटर्स हैं ना हम उनको प्रोटेक्ट नहीं करेंगे, जो बॉलीवुड के लोग हैं उनको प्रोटेक्ट नहीं करेंगे हम. द डे दे विल टेल यू, वो तो ऐसा करते नहीं है कि भाई हम सिलेक्टेड लोगों को प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे जो उनके साथ खेलते नहीं है, जो उनके साथ डांस नहीं करते, उसके साथ गाना नहीं करते. व्हाट काइंड ऑफ कंट्री आर वी लिविंग इन? व्हाट आर्गुमेंट्स आर वी गिविंग? व्हाट एशिया एंड व्हाट स्पोर्ट्स एंड व्हाट ओलंपिक्स? द लॉजिक हैज टू बी सिंपल. This country is a terror country. We don't want to entertain ourselves with them. What is Bollywood? What is sports? It's entertainment. It is straight, not entertainment. We can't dance around with them, with the killers of our security forces and of our human beings, of our countrymen. They have been completely against our country. They are killers. How can you play with if your neighbor in your house, if your neighbor Anand,
the ICC Test Championship
kills you.
I have to wind up, but viewers note this. The ICC Test Championship, Bharat has made it to the finals without playing Pakistan. How has Bharat avoided playing bilateral test cricket with Pakistan all this while and still made it to the finals of the ICC Test Championship and continues to play? So, if the BCCI puts its mind to it, it can do it. But if the BCCI doesn't put its mind to it, because India-Pakistan gets so much of money, broadcaster investment, broadcaster pressure and all of that, revenues is concerned. So then the question is, is money more important than blood? If it didn't matter in trade, if it didn't matter in shipping routes, it doesn't matter in airline routes and it doesn't matter there, and Bharat is willing to forego all that for the sake of Bharat, and all those traders, all those merchants, all those exporters, all those travelers, all of them are willing to do that and take that pinch for Bharat. Now, why not the BCCI? Fair question, unfair? Please tell us, viewers. Take the poll on CNN News 18. Take the poll on my handle also. That's a question that's there. And we've got more than 640 votes. We'd like more of your opinion and thought. And then perhaps those who are supposed to take the decision on this will wisen up to it. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. Namaste.
also presented by. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
The Dalai Lama, who remember in some days from now will be turning 90, and he has made a very important announcement as he is in McLeodganj. He has announced that he will have his successor after his death. He says that the foundation of the Dalai Lama will elect his successor. And remember, this is also rooted in the traditional Buddhist Tibetan customs, because that's when a successor is chosen of the Dalai Lama, only after his passing. Siddhant joins me to put this into perspective. Siddhant, take us through what is the larger message behind this announcement by the Dalai Lama, and what does it mean for China?
Akanksha, as per what Manoj Gupta is reporting for us, then Dalai Lama's speech decimates plans of China imposing their own man, Pancham Lama. In fact, Dalai Lama made it very clear that my succession will be after me by the trust. Dalai Lama has taken a decisive step to anchor his succession in Tibetan spiritual authority. In fact, Dalai Lama has clearly said continuation of the institution of the Dalai Lama will work on his succession. No external actor or political or religion can interfere. The process will involve consultations with the high Tibetan Lamas and reference to Dharma protectors, reject any claim by China or unauthorized actors, and its continuity with a pan-Buddhist exile-led spiritual framework. Now, top intel sources are telling this to Manoj Gupta that this statement neutralizes Beijing's narrative that the Dalai Lama's role is outdated or that his successor can be controlled through state machinery. It creates a shield around his reincarnation, rooted in tradition and institutional legitimacy.
Stay with me, Siddhant. In fact, those are breaking inputs that we are bringing to our viewers, shared by Security Affairs Editor Mr. Manoj Gupta, referring to Dalai Lama's speech and that big announcement coming in. What is the larger context? Well, it certainly decimates China's plans, imposing their own Pancham Lama. Top intelligence sources revealing to CNN News 18 that this statement neutralizes Beijing's narrative that the Dalai Lama's role is outdated or that his successor can be controlled through any kind of state machinery. I quickly go back to Siddhant, who will put this into perspective for us. Siddhant, important to also highlight why China was looking towards this big announcement, and does China even have the right to interfere in Dalai Lama's succession, given that it's traditionally rooted in the Tibetan Buddhist custom?
Well, China's position perhaps has been very clear as far as the succession of Dalai Lama is concerned, and this is exactly what Manoj Gupta is reporting, that the Dalai Lama's speech decimates plans of China imposing their own Pancham Lama. In fact, China has also been trying to send this message out to the world that how they have preserved the rich Buddhist Tibetan heritage and the monasteries and the places of Tibetan culture in whole of Tibet, and China also always wanted to send this message out that how China can take care of the Buddhist community, the traditional Tibetan community living in China. Having said that, now top intel sources are telling this to Manoj Gupta, Akanksha, that this statement by Dalai Lama today neutralizes Beijing's narrative that the Dalai Lama's role is outdated or that his successor can be controlled through state machinery. Manoj Gupta also says in his report that it creates a shield around his reincarnation, rooted in tradition and institutional legitimacy, making any future Chinese appointed Dalai Lama appear inauthentic. Manoj also has to say that the inclusion of consultations with Mongolian, Russian, Himalayan and Chinese Buddhist communities internationalizes the selection process and signals broad legitimacy beyond India or Dharamshala. Right. Operationally, it empowers the exile apparatus, Gaiden Hodrang and plus CTA to begin preparing succession mechanisms discreetly before his passing. So Manoj's report has to say that the succession process of Dalai Lama will begin after this particular televised statement which he has made, and perhaps making it very clear that it's going to be the office of His Holiness Dalai Lama which will be choosing his successor, the reincarnation of His Holiness Dalai Lama.
You know, interestingly, Siddhant, that's also in conjunction with what the United States has been calling for. Remember, US lawmakers last year had passed a Tibet Dispute Act, which categorically stated that they will not recognize any Beijing-appointed Dalai Lama, and that this decision to have a successor is going to be chosen by their foundation. So what is the role over here of Washington, say, which is also going to be keeping their eyes on this announcement?
Well,
Good evening, you're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. The Dalai Lama has made a hugely significant declaration today that he will have a successor, that there will be a 15th Dalai Lama, and that the successor for the current Dalai Lama will be chosen by what is called the Garden Phodrang Trust. It's a trust that is run by the office of the Dalai Lama. It has people that's been nominated by him, including famous Hollywood actor Richard Gere. What this does is two things. One, now there is certainty that there will be a 15th Dalai Lama, so that the continuation of the lineage, the continuation